Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court and CPS issues. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, and I have a guest today. His name is Charles Stecker Jr. Charles displayed his first acts of courage and heroism at the young age of 4 years old by attempting to rescue his 2-year-old brother. Sadly, his brother was murdered despite Charles's efforts. All through his early childhood and then through his teen years, Charles was abused in every way conceivable. He constantly lost family, friends, and belongings. As a young man, he joined the U.S. Coast Guard, which aided in developing his character and leadership skills. Some of the issues from his childhood followed him into adulthood. Broken relationships and shallow friendships, unfortunately, were the norm. With a take charge attitude, Charles was able to turn his life around, overcoming his past and bringing victory not only into his life, but to the lives of others as well. His unbreakable faith in God and the ability for mountains to be moved through that faith has kept Charles pressing on with his life's mission. His fervent hope is that through the sharing of his life experiences, a positive change will happen in your life, your family, and your community through you. He's been featured on many radio talk shows, television shows, and newspaper articles. Charles is a founder and director of currently defunct International Child Abuse Prevention Task Force Incorporated, an organization that he has every intention of reviving. Charles is also a children's rights warrior, parental responsibility activist, and chronic Lyme disease thriver. He is currently and/or formerly a member of the Child Welfare League of America, the American Professional Society on Abuse of Children, the International Society for the Prevention of Child Abuse and Neglect, the National Association of Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, Protecting Canadian Children, Being Beautiful Foundation, Children Without a Voice, Stand Up for Kids, court-appointed special advocates, the American Legion, the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania Lodge 2, and Shriners International. Wow, that was a mouthful. How you doing, Charles? And you're involved in a lot of projects, so we're going to have a good talk.
Absolutely, we are. And thank you, first of all, for affording me the opportunity to be here with you today. And more importantly, and most importantly, to our listeners out there that will be listening to this, thank you for taking the time to log in and listen. And hopefully, something that I'm blessed to impart today will have as it says in my intro, a positive impact for you. Also, I want to invite that if there's something I say or you hear or you interpret that maybe doesn't vibrate positive with you, maybe gives you some sort of negative feeling or concern, please, you're going to, at the end of the show, you're going to have some contact information to reach out to me. I would love to have a conversation with you because while I have my viewpoints, I don't stand steadfast if they're the only answer. So I'm looking forward to this, and thank you for reading that intro. Yes, I'm blessed. I don't like putting things out there. I actually, if you could see me, if they could see me, I'm a little blushing because I'm not a big person on putting out there, ooh, look what I do. I'd rather say, look what I've done and get it completed and let it speak for me. But yeah, I'm very active because I believe in what we are doing, because this is not a me effort. What you're doing today, allowing us to be here, what our listeners are doing now into the future. These are the things that are going to make the changes. It only takes a spark to start a fire, folks. And if every one of us is a spark, we can have an inferno burning this whole thing down in no time flat so that it can rebuild and restructure and become what it should be, a better life and a better future for the children, not only in America, but across the world.
And that's good to hear because these kids are going unnoticed. They're falling through the cracks. It's just an ongoing daily battle that seems to be kind of not going anywhere.
I agree with you. And the irony is, as in my intro, matter of fact, let me take it back a little bit. In the beginning of my intro, we mentioned about my and the writing was for friends of mine wrote for me, but my act of heroism. Was it really heroism? I don't know. I think it was instinct of survival. But
Hmm.
what I want to say, the reason I'm going to that for a moment is, people may have heard murdered brother. What's that about? Well, my brother was was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, was what they claimed in 1967 as one of the first children murdered in a foster home there. I have since found out that not to be true, because 10 months before my brother's murder, another child died in the same home. But here's the key. It's not about what happened to my brother and me, or Brent Garcia before my brother, because that's all, 54 and 55 years ago. My concern is that this many years later, this many decades later, okay, over half a century later, we still have a system that, while claiming to have bettered themselves, can be proven that they haven't. Because ultimately, in my opinion, the death of a child in a system that is supposed to be designed to protect them, and the pandemic levels, the real pandemic of what we got going on in the world, and especially here in America, of children dying in a system that's supposed to be protecting them, if they've fixed that, this should be a lot better now, 55 years later, than what it was then. And it's not. It's worse. We know daily, as long as we're on this show for the next hour, in America somewhere, a child's going to die from abuse or neglect. This is disgusting. And it's what drives me. My brother's murder, I don't live in that. I don't wallow in that. I'm not angry about that. I'm angry because we still have children experiencing what I experienced. We still have children who today are 17, tomorrow will be 18 because it's their birthday, and they suddenly become an adult, and they're not be prepared and being thrust into a world that they're not ready for. And this is why it's our responsibility as adults to stand up, as my intro said as well. I'm a parental responsibility advocate. I'm a father, by the way, so I do have a child. I can speak from this experience. um, I do not believe, in my opinion, again, that parents have a right to a child. Right creates ownership. Right creates some sort of dictatorship. We have responsibilities as parents, again, in my opinion, to protect the rights of the children that we're blessed to be able to upbring during their childhood, because ultimately they're going to become an adult. My daughter's 30 years old and doing amazing things right now. But thank you so much.
I'm really honored to have you on because you're very interesting, and I know you have a lot to say. And I've got some questions for you. How did you become known as the protector of children?
Great question. Thank you so much for that. So, the Protector of Children title is actually bestowed on me by a cyber social network person. And by the way, folks, cyber social network isn't social networking, okay? It's a nice tool. It's wonderful. It's what brought us together today. It's what's bringing us together as you listen to this podcast. But ultimately, real social networking is face to face meeting. But I was given the title because someone looked over my life's work and what I've done. And I came to realize, my focus is, and always will be on the children. So the protector of the children came from that. Um, I've been called the voice of the children, the voice of the voiceless. I'm blessed to sit, as I know it wasn't in my intro again, because there's so many things we do. We could be here for hours with any one of us. Listen, my intro isn't any better or worse than anyone else's. We all have things we do. It's a matter of listing them. But one of the things I'm blessed to do as well is I sit on my local county Children and Youth Advisory Board. And on that board, they know I am the voice of the child. I am not there to bring in my view. I'm bringing in the voice of the children. And people would say, "You're 58, 9 years old." Yeah, 59 now. Yeah, boy, numbers are going quick. But you're 59 years old. What can you possibly bring to the table from a child's voice? Well, here's the key, folks. It's because I take the time to listen to the children. I speak to children regularly. And I'm talking children who are children today, that are growing up in the environment today, because what they're growing up with today is not what I grew up with some 40 or 50 years ago. And so when I go to them, I draw from them. And what I let the children know, and not only know, but see, is that I will not only hear them, because we all know the old saying, children should be seen and not heard.
Mhm.
Well, I want them to not only be seen and heard, I want them to know that I'm listening to them, because we can hear anything. It can bounce off our eardrums and just go away. But if we allow ourselves to actually listen, it sinks in deeper into our minds. And then when it sinks into our minds, if we allow it to germinate there, it can actually grow into a thought process that actually creates an action based off of what the child tells you. And some people may say, "Oh, Charlie, children are just going to tell you they want candy and fun and games." And you know what? If you actually took the time and sat down and talked with the child, you may be astonishingly awakened to facts that you never even realized. And I am. I mean, I was with a 2-year-old the other day at a buddy of mine's house, and I just asked this little 2-year-old a simple, "So what do you want the world to be when you grow up?" Oh my goodness, you might have thought I was talking to somebody sitting in a diplomatic seat somewhere. I was just a very deep conversation. So the important thing is, please, folks, listen to the children. And so that's the answer to the question, how did I become known that? Because that's what I do. When I sit down anywhere, I speak anywhere, I come as the voice of the child, being the child, the person that was that child, but bringing it current, because children of today are being heard through the words I'm sharing that are coming from them.
Do you have people contacting you regularly, or how often do they contact you with problems or issues?
Well, a great word, problems. Let's throw that away. Let's call them challenges, because I like having challenges, and I'm a problem solver too, and I help other. What I like to do. And so the answer to your question, how often? Well, if I told you numerous times a day, you'd probably go, really? I said, yes, numerous times a day. The numbers, I don't count them. I don't keep a tally. I just whatever the service needs. Doesn't matter that today, when we're actually doing this taping, we know today is Super Bowl Sunday, and oh my goodness, how important is that? No, what's more important is what's happening to the children of Super Bowl Sunday. What's happening to children right now during these lockdowns, this pandemic, forced mask wearing that's actually lowering their ability to build up their immune system when they get older because they're not exposed to the actual viruses in the air that their body could use. That's a topic for another moment, but the answer is yes. A lot of calls and a lot of collaboration. Okay, because again, as I said earlier, this is not a me effort. This is a we effort. So I get a lot of calls, but yes, I work with a lot of other people collaboratively so that we can have a broader scope and a broader outreach to make an impact for these children's lives.
It seems like CPS is, well, in my opinion, I think in a lot of people's opinion that I've had on this podcast, they're just not doing their job, and they're actually seeking out children to take away and destroy families.
You know what a great observation, and I strongly lean towards supporting everything you said there. Some of the challenges I face with it are the fact that we the general population, the people that aren't in these governmental and or non-governmental administrative places that call themselves child protection agencies, that call themselves child welfare agencies, Department of Youth and Family Services, whatever title, whatever acronym they want to give themselves to give them a warm fuzzy feeling. And that's what it is. It's a warm fuzzy feeling. There's a lot of well-meaning people working there. Not everyone there is a total loser. Not everyone involved in there is bad. The challenges we're facing, and they are facing, is a lot of times they are stuck under administrative guidelines and political bureaucracy and judicial bureaucracy that locks them into positions where they have to make a choice of it's my job or this child. Well, here's my answer to all of that. If you are working in the governmental or non-governmental private agency world of child protection, and you are not doing everything you can to put yourself out of business, please get out of the business, because your job is to stop the abuse of children, stop the neglect of children, stop putting children back into negative places. You said it very eloquently, and I'm going to clear some smoke out of the way for me, with the fact of the matter being that we've seen trends not only across America but around the world. As I said in my intro, I'm a former member. I'm still somewhat not as active as I was in the International Society for the Prevention of Child Abuse and Neglect, but we see repeatedly over and over children returned to detrimental situations, which makes absolutely zero sense when you want to have the title Child Protective Services or whatever else that makes it sound good that you're trying to do. So why are they returning these? What would make someone that wants to protect a child return a child to a place that's not good for them. And it's not always the child protection services agencies. Sometimes it's the family courts, the judges, the lawyers sitting behind there that are the voices of these children that don't actually have voices until folks like me and myself and many others come in. What is it? What's the driving factor? Well, when you stick your head down enough of these rabbit holes and you start not finding carrots, but you finding cash, you start understanding what's going on. Okay, it's the cash flow, folks. It's the fact of if these children and these families, because children are born into families, not into governmental systems, not into private agencies. Folks, the reform that we need to create in the child welfare system is the child welfare system known as family. Because when we do that, we can negate all these other systems. But that being said, they're putting these children in detrimental places because if they didn't need the services, then you wouldn't need the job. Then they wouldn't get their grants, they wouldn't get their money, they wouldn't get the federal funding, the state funding, the county funding that keeps them operating. Again, if you're in the business, and even what I do, I want to drive myself out of business. Now, I do not get paid for any of my child advocacy work, never did, never will. Won't accept donations for it because I was given much by overcoming my past. It's my responsibility to give it to others. I have zero problem, and I do not, pass judgment on anyone that does charge for their services. My conviction is mine not to, but we need to change this system, and we need to understand that we, you, me, the listeners, now and in the future, we are the system. We are the change makers. We are the ones that need to step up to the plate, and children's lives are depending on us. And so make them accountable for how they're spending your tax dollar. Folks, that money's being spent is your tax dollar. It's your federal tax, it's your local tax, it's your state tax, it's your sales tax. It's your money. You have a right to make sure how it's spent.
What do you suggest people that, that are hearing this, that they should do to also be heard? Should they go to their county commissioner? Should they go to their legislator? How should they handle this?
Well, I think first of all, the first suggestion I would have on what they should do, first they should make a decision to do something. Once they make that decision to do something, you need to find where your comfort zone is. Some people don't have the ability to be what's called, quote, confrontational. I have zero problem with confrontational because I know how to de-escalate confrontations. They can get very hot and heated, but they also can be de-escalated to the point where we can agree to disagree, ultimately to have the best outcome for kids. But where to start? Start wherever it is that you're comfortable. I'll give you a simple example. This is one I use in a lot of my places, and it's a real easy way to understand, a really simple thing to do. So most of us have been in a grocery store. Let's pick the candy aisle or the cereal aisle, okay? And we've seen a child just having a big old tantrum because they want whatever that is that they want. That's sweet, and the adult's there, and you see the adult getting more and more tense and possibly even grabbing that child, possibly even doing something that gives the appearance of abuse. Now, in my opinion, and again, this is my opinion, anyone physically grabbing a child in an aggressive manner is being abusive. And that's my opinion. I'm a dad, never raised a hand to my daughter, never will, never, and I don't believe in corporal punishment. I believe in using mental thought. But here's what you do. So I've had this happen numerous times. So how do you confront that situation? This is an idea, okay? I'll go up and I'll go near something, near whatever's going on, and I'll purposely knock something unbreakable off the shelf on the floor. Don't throw a jar on the floor, folks, because then it'll be clean up aisle 3. And yes, I do have a sense of humor, but I'll purposely knock something on the floor in the vicinity, a cereal box, a bag of candy, and I'll bend down to pick it up. And as I'm bending down, I look up, say, "We sound like you're having a rough day," and then I'll pick up the thing, and it's opened up a conversation where now I've diverted what's going on between the child and them, and I'm starting a conversation with the adult. And I'm not making accusations. I'm just saying, how sounds like you're having a rough day. And so many times they begin to open up, and then the child starts talking. So and what I shared with you is there's ways of doing things, and confrontation is not the answer when it's an aggressive confrontation, because aggressiveness only leads to defensiveness. And defensiveness leads to hiding, and then it's not a good thing for that child to see, especially if it's a child that is being abused or neglected, because now they're even more fearful. So that's just one of my simple methods. There's many, many more. Hopefully I answered your question. If I didn't, I'd be more than happy to go back and visit it again.
Well, I was going into a store with my sister-in-law, Joy, and it was wintertime. I believe it was February, and it had to be at least 30 degrees, okay? And we saw a mother going in with two kids, probably under the age of 4. One had a coat on, the other one just had a long sleeve T-shirt on. And I said to my sister-in-law, I said, "Why doesn't that kid have a coat on? This weather, I mean, I can't take it." So we got in the store, and she had them in a cart, and she was looking at something. I just, like, walked past, and I kind of paused, and I said, "He really should have a coat on in this weather." Boom! I'm telling you, she started yelling at me. She started following us all over the store, through up and down every aisle, and my sister-in-law is saying, "I'm never taking you shopping again." Um,
Uh,
uh, and this went on until we left. I mean, we left, we got what we had to get, and then we left.
Well, it's interesting you say that, you bring that up, because and folks, just so you know, our host and I haven't we had a conversation the other day, but we didn't get into a lot of different things. But it's funny that you bring up a story about a coat and a child going out in the cold without one, because and I'm not saying this parent did or didn't do the situation, but I'll tell you what happened with me. From a very young age, I taught my daughter that her decisions and her choices will develop the consequences that come from it. So there was a time when my daughter and I was taking her out shopping. It was cold. I wanted her to put a coat on. She didn't want to put a coat on. So I asked her again. I said, "Okay, I want you to understand, you're making a decision. You put a coat on, you stay warm. You don't have a coat on, you go outside, you're going to be cold. You have made a choice. The consequence is you're going to be cold while we're out there." "I'll be okay, Daddy. I'm fine." So we got outside, got to the car. "It's cold. Can I go get my coat?" And maybe it sounds abusive, okay? But my daughter, I didn't keep her out in the cold. We got in a warm car. We drove to the store. We didn't go back in and get the coat, because I wanted her to realize that she made a decision, and the consequence was, "Ooh, I'm cold." Not Daddy's right, because Daddy didn't need to be right. Okay, I wasn't there to say you should be listening to me, but it was letting her learn from that. And she told me many years later that one experience taught her to think of how it's going to affect her. She goes, "I really thought it was what you wanted me to do for you, when it really was what I needed to do for myself." So I don't know what that person was thinking that day. Maybe that parent, or if it was a parent, it may have just been an aunt, uncle, grandmom, who knows, a neighbor taking a kid shopping. Maybe they did that. Maybe they were trying to get the child to put the coat on. The child just didn't want to. Or maybe they didn't. I don't know. But it's a tough call. And I think the way you handled it was right. If she reacted that way, my opinion, again, I wasn't there, but based off what I know, sounds like a bit of a guilty conscience came up, because had it been somewhere like my daughter's situation, I would have asked my daughter, "You could tell them why you don't have a coat on." And my daughter said, "I didn't want to wear one." Well, there you go. But, I applaud you for doing that. What courage it took. Hopefully you still can go shopping with your sister-in-law. She hasn't banned you for life.
It's
But
taken her a while. Well, see, because that child was, I would say, between 2 and 3 years old.
okay.
So that child, in my opinion, did not have a voice to say, "Can you put my coat on?"
I agree. Now, if they were that young, yeah, my daughter was about 5 or 6, but yeah, 2 or 3, at the least had a blanket wrapped around them or something. That I agree. So, well, whoever that was, in your heart of hearts, you did the right thing. And, they obviously, from their overreaction, again, I wasn't there, but based off of my experience and what you shared with me, it definitely sounds like guilty conscience was all over them. And they just wanted to try to not look at themselves. Let me deflect it and reflect it back on you, because you're the bad person. So, but thank you for what you did. And we need more of that. We need more people that are willing to stand up and say something, because those little children, 2 or 3 years old, they have a voice, but they don't have a voice that anybody's really listening to.
Right, and when I had mentioned that to her, and then she started chasing me around the store with these 2 little kids in the cart, I wonder what they were thinking. And everyone was, like, staring at us, and I'm thinking, "Where is the store's security?" she was getting that close to us.
Wow.
And Joy is saying, I am never taking you shopping with me again. Can't you keep your mouth shut? But I
But Joy
just,
did realize, at some point, I guess, that you did the right thing, or did
yes,
she? Yeah, I
yes.
mean, because it was the right thing to do, and shame on that parent or that person who had the child with them for not having what they needed. Even at 2 or 3, if my daughter had told me she didn't want a jacket or want anything, not that she would have, she was too little to say that then, but if she had said that, I would have brought one with me anyway and had it with me,
Mhm.
because they're too little to actually be able to have that cognitive reasoning and understanding. So okay, you want to give me a hard time, you're not gonna have, my daughter never gave me a tantrum, because whatever, even when she wanted a bottle, okay. But as an infant, but I would have probably at that age, I would have had something with me, and at least had it in the cart with me, had it in the car with me, so that way, if the child was giving me a hard time, at least, hey, look, I have it here. But I applaud what you did. That it took a lot of courage, and hopefully you would do it again. And you know what? I think the example you set for your sister-in-law, I would bet she might be a little more courageous in being able to possibly say something if she were to see something, because that's so important. We hear, and that's it's a saying that's put out there, and it really is so important. If you see something, say something, even if you're not sure what you're seeing is what you think it is. If you don't say anything, and if it is what you think it is and you didn't do anything, then in my opinion, you become part and parcel to whatever it was that was going on. So saying something doesn't make you a bad person.
Mhm.
So again, I encourage anyone that's listening to this, please, for the sake of the child or children that may be involved, please don't fear in saying something. Just use jurisprudence when you are saying something, and find a way to do it where you're not going to be followed around the store for the rest of your time there, and harassed yourself. But don't be discouraged by what you heard of the being chased around, because that, for one thing, at least you got to keep an eye on the children. They weren't being abused and neglected during that time, you know,
Right.
and ultimately, who knows? Maybe that parent or that person left that day with a extra jacket or a blanket for the child, or
Mhm.
or maybe you instilled a seed in their head that, ooh, the next time I go out, it's not about what somebody might see, it's about what's good for that child. So
Mhm.
thank you again. I appreciate you doing that.
Or even hopefully all these people watching, and there were a lot of people in the store, but hopefully maybe someone was watching and I don't know, maybe someone made a phone call, maybe someone bought that kid a jacket. I don't know.
Right. And here's the other interesting thing, as you say, so many people were watching. Now, you were the catalyst that created this. You started the spark that should have had society known how to react and do things, that should have started at the least a bit of a campfire there, where some other people came up in support of you, or at least in
Mhm,
support of the child, not necessarily you, because you weren't doing it for you. You were doing it because of what the child's needs were. And I don't know if they did or didn't, but so far it doesn't sound like it. Sounds like a lot of people saw, but few said. And again, this is part of the reason we're doing this today, empowering adults to understand that the only adult not responsible for child abuse intervention and prevention is any adult that themselves was never a child. So I
mhm.
say that, and I mean that with all sincerity. And I also throw in, because I have a little bit of humor, if you weren't a child at any point in your life, come see me. I want to know how you missed it. You may not have had a childhood, but you were a child at some point.
Right. In fact, I'll tell you another quick story. When my kids were in, oh, gee, I would say maybe 6th, 7th grade, and it was winter, and here we go again with the winter coat. I could not get my 6th grader to wear a coat. And I said, "You gotta wear your winter coat." "Well, I'm going to wear the sweat." It was like a hoodie sweatshirt. And I thought, "I don't wanna get in trouble." That's all I could think of.
Mhm.
But, he just fought me on it and fought me on it for months. And I called the teacher, actually weeks and weeks, but I called the teacher and I said, "If you're wondering why he's not wearing a winter coat, I can't even get him to put it on." And she says, "You know what? This is the trend. All these boys are wearing hooded sweatshirts to school because it's cool." I said, "Even in 22-degree weather?" She said, "Yep, they're all doing it." She said, "Don't feel bad."
Well, and how about the, I, how what age bracket is your son that was doing this now?
Now he is 19.
Okay. So my daughter's a bit older, but my daughter went through this flip-flop stage. Middle of winter, flip-flops. I'm like, in school. And I'm like, what are you wearing flip-flops at the school on top of it? When I went to school, it was shoes and shoes and socks, and your feet weren't showing. Different world, different thing. But flip-flops, they were in, and yeah, I was concerned, like, they're gonna think she doesn't have any shoes. But I went to the school, and there's all the kids walking in pajama bottoms and flip-flops. I'm like, okay, welcome to the 1990s, I guess. It's really a different world.
And I remember that too because Joy's son was doing the same thing. He was wearing shorts with socks and the type of flip-flops. I don't know if they were a name brand, that they all had to have.
Oh, the Adidas ones where you slip your foot in with
Yes.
the sock on. Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Actually, I said 1990s. My daughter was in school in high school in 2000, 2005 to 9. But yeah, so but yeah, it was and so at least when we know that, it gives us some peace. But and again, as we say that, we also have there's another side to this. We have a hyperactiveness and hyper awareness to abuse, that some things aren't abuse. Redirection of a child, giving them healthy boundaries, is not abusive behavior. Okay. Again, I said in the beginning, and I'll repeat myself, that I don't believe in corporal punishment. I do not believe a child should have a hand laid on them at all for any reason, even on the tush. People say, "Oh, spare the rod, spoil the child." Well, for those who attempt to understand what the Bible says, God has a sense of humor. He allowed me to become an ordained minister for some crazy reason. But, the rod the Bible speaks of is not a rod that strikes anyone. It's actually a dual thing. It's the rod, number one, of the shepherd. And if you ever watch a shepherd in the fields with its sheep, the rod is not used to hit the sheep. The rod is used to guide the sheep alongside of them. Okay. The other rod, and the more important rod that we don't talk about very much, but that we use to talk, is our tongue. Our tongue is the sharpest and the rod that can cause the most damage. So how we speak to our children, how we speak to each other, how we speak to the public in general, can either tear down or build up. So there is the rod. Don't spare the rod. Don't spare the rod of redirection, of boundaries. Children need boundaries. A child with no boundaries will become an adult who has no limits to what they will attempt to do. Now, in some ways that's good, but in other ways we need to have healthy boundaries, because that we can lower our prison rates, we can lower our drug addictions, we can lower all those things with that. Don't be afraid to give your child boundaries. Please, folks, if you see someone speaking to a child in a way it's not, they're not calling them names, they're not deriding them, but they're redirecting them because of some negative behavior. Because guess what? Children, just like us adults, display negative behavior from time to time. It's part of the human nature. Don't jump in and right away think that's abuse. Allow yourself to at least digest it a little bit, take a look. And again, if you think it is, please say something. And by the way, who do you say something to? What a great question. Glad I came up with it. So who do you say something to? What do you do when you think you see something? Well, I'm going to just pose this question for our listeners, not to answer, because obviously you can't answer because you're listening. This is interactive where you're speaking with us right now. But I want you to think about, and I'm going to ask my host here, when you see a child, and you see what you perceive as abuse going on, who or what is the first thing you call?
Well, okay. First of all, in my normal life, I really never saw anything that I would have to make a phone call. Second of all, I was a nurse for 23 years. So then I had worked in the emergency room. Then I had to make the phone call. But I would first have to tell my charge nurse, and then we would get the forensic nurse in to take photographs, and then I would be calling CPS.
Right. There you go. And here's the key there. And this is one of the things that I don't like using the word teach, because I like the word guide, because while we teaching, we're also being taught. Always be open to learn from everybody. So, but one of the things I learned early on is the fact that when I ask people that question whenever I speak, the majority of the time, the first answer I get is, well, you call Child Protective Services or Child Welfare, or whatever they call them there. That's not actually the answer, folks. because as soon as you open that door to child protection services, you open the door to government agencies to come in and be involved in your life or the life of the child. Now, is that necessary? Yes, there's times it's necessary. But let me tell you the most important call to make. The first call you should make, if it's a family member in your family, if it's a neighbor, a friend, the first person you should call is a family member, because the family is the child welfare system for that child, not these agencies. Now, I've spoken to agencies across the country and several internationally about this, about the fact of a family member can act and react faster to the possibility of abusive situation with the child in their family tree than any agency can, because agencies, including law enforcement, have protocols they must meet before they can take that next step. So here's what I would say. If you know you have founded abuse, you know you have zero doubt it's abuse and neglect, call law enforcement first. That's the call you make. If you have no doubt that it's, they call law enforcement. Law enforcement is required to report immediately, and they will respond immediately. They can get a warrant and get that child out of there immediately. If it's something you're not certain of, you get a feeling about it, see if you can find a friend or neighbor. See if you can find, maybe it's a total stranger and you don't know. Um, but there's ways of getting information. But I would say reach out to the families first, friends of the family possibly, and let's see what we can do there. We then what we do is we empower our families to understand their positions. We also lessen the burden of cases that are being thrust into these child welfare agencies, these family courts. We lessen them because we have taken on the personal responsibility of taking care of the children that are in our family trees. And on my Facebook page, and I have a presentation on it as well, I have a list of who are members of the child welfare system. And I call the child welfare system known as family. And it's teaching those people family isn't just mom and dad or grandmom and grandpa. Family's the next door neighbor, family's the friend of the family. Everyone can do something. Everyone should attempt to do something.
Okay, I've talked to a couple parents, and they've had their children removed and given to, say, their brother-in-law or their sister and brother-in-law, which is which is good. They're not in foster care, but then sometimes it gets more complicated, because then those individuals start taking over the parental role. And I've been hearing things from parents that have had their kids taken away, that now the kid is calling their sister-in-law or, brother-in-law, mom or dad, and starts erasing that parent away, even though they're trying to do and get their kids back and doing what they're ordered to do or whatever, even if it was based on a false accusation.
I hear you, and again, relational stories. I have a nephew who my biological mother, who was my original abuser, um, stole from my sister when he was born, my sister's oldest child, and took off out of state with him. Basically, kidnapped him, but nothing was ever done. Subsequently, he has, for his entire life, and he's in his mid-30s now, called his grandmother mom. She's grandmom, not mom. I have conversations. I don't have them with her anymore because talking to my mother is, might as well talk to a wall. The brick listens better than she does. But I explained to her that she had a responsibility, first of all, to continue to help him build a relationship with his mother. Secondly, to make him very aware that she wasn't mom, that she's grandmom. And, so it's important that as the adults, if you're an adult that's in that situation where you have a child that you are kinship caring, or maybe you have, a significant other that has a child, that child needs to know the truth of what that person's role is. They may be a mother figure, a father figure, a parental role model, but they are not mom and or dad. And yes, unfortunately, as we know, there isn't any one answer that's the right answer for any of this. And kinship care has been abused as well. I have many friends of mine who have lost their children to parents and family members that then took the children and went cross country and uh, tried to disappear with them. And that isn't right either. So therein goes back to when a child is put into kinship care, which is for those who don't, folks who don't know what kinship care is kinship care is when a child's put back within the family structure, someone within the family that's providing housing and care for this child, as opposed to a total stranger being foster care. When they're put in there, the system that put them there, normally it's the child welfare system or the judicial system, they should have and need to have oversight to watch what's going on and monitor, so that that way we can limit this from happening, hold these people accountable for not doing what they're required to do for that child and children. So you're right. It's a sad, sad state of affairs, especially when that's going on, because those of us who vehemently push for kinship care uh, do have to understand, and I do, that a lot of times that's not even the best answer. And a lot of hats off to parents out there that are working so diligently to get your children back if you lost them. The horrid events I went through it to a divorce where my child was, they attempted to take my child from me. They actually kept her away from me for an entire year. I understand it, and all I did wrong was I didn't do anything except I mishandled money in my marriage, which was wrong, but I wasn't abusive. I wasn't neglectful. And my daughter didn't have any reason not to have dad around. And so I understand it. And hopefully, we can start waking adults up, no matter where they are in life, that a child needs both parents. A child will seek out their parent. I'm going to tell you what, the most abusive parent in the world, when that child turns 18 or of age, they will go and seek that parent out. And so, and woe be you if they find that parent and they find out the stories that they were told about that parent aren't true. You've just really hurt this young person as a child and now as a young adult, that's going to carry that burden, that mantle on them for the remainder of their life. So it's a very complicated thing. There's no one simple answer, but I think in order to start anywhere, we have to start somewhere, and we definitely need to uh, de destruct or deconstruct, not destruct, not make it destroy it. We need to deconstruct the child welfare system that's run by the government, non-government agencies, and we need to reconstruct it with the understanding of what they actually need to be doing, and that's why I'm blessed to sit on my local county's Children and Youth Advisory Board. Rumor has it within the next year I'm going to possibly be nominated, at least, if not appointed, to my state Children and Youth Advisory Board. And folks, if you're hearing this and going, well, I could never do that, I don't have that education. Folks, I have a high school diploma. Okay, that's as far as my academic education goes. Let me tell you something I told somebody a long time ago, and each one of us, it's true for all of us. I was asked one day when I was speaking at Princeton University where my degree was from. And I looked at them and yes, I have a sense of humor. And I said that several times. And I looked at them and says, oh, I was born with 98.6 of them. I didn't figure I needed any more. See, academics brings us knowledge. It can further our some level of understanding, but until you've lived it, until you've experienced it, you don't really know it. So that's where your education of life is what's going to dictate and how you do things. So please, it doesn't matter if you don't even have a sixth grade education. Academics is not the knowledge that applies here. It's what's in your instinct. When that still small voice tells you inside something's wrong. Women's intuition, spot on, folks. Hey, listen, I'm a guy. I'm telling you, if a woman tells me she has a feeling, I listen to it, because women as are created, are more in tune with their emotional selves than we as men are. Sadly, men aren't trained up to do that. I'm hoping to change that as well. But even men, we have that. When you have that voice inside that says something, listen to it for a moment. Allow it to come into your mind and see what it does. So hopefully I answered again. I know I go into long answers, so I apologize.
No, that's okay. I think a lot of people don't listen to their gut. They're watching a situation and they're trying to like decipher it, but they're not listening to their true instinct.
I agree. And, sadly, a lot of people are watching too much TV, AKA the boob tube. Guess what, folks? Those reality shows out there have no reality involved. It's entertainment to take your focus off what's really going on in life. Okay. And
Mhm.
that's okay to have that. Just like today, we talked about the Super Bowl. Today's Super Bowl Sunday. Oh my goodness. People rooting for a team they hate all year long, but that they're doing that today. But, I worked for the NFL for 3 years, for 3 seasons, 2009, 10, 11. I learned very quickly during my first season with them. It's momentary entertainment, folks. It's not something to kill over. And that's what it is. These are distractions. These shows that we're watching, somebody watches a detective show. All of a sudden, they're a forensic investigator. You don't really know what you're doing. You might have a general idea based off what you think you saw, but take the time and learn for yourself. Reach out if you don't have the experience. I'm going to be giving my contact information at the end of the show, and I know our awesome host here has afforded me the opportunity that in the future I may be able to come back, and we'll see how that comes together. But if you not sure what to do, there's plenty of resources out here, and myself and many others make themselves available. So when I will be I give my direct cell phone number out. It's with me 24/7, 366. I will answer it. If I can't answer you, you'll leave me a message and I will get back to you. That's how important it is to me. I don't believe that we should just tell somebody to call somebody else. At least not for me. Call me. I don't care if it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Life happens all the time. But you know, I got lost in something. I went off track, but I just got something real quick just popped up as we're talking. I'm seeing here. I'm going to look into it when we're done this podcast. Apparently, Mike Pence is starting a podcast aimed at young people. It's enable children to share good news. So I'm curious to see what that is. It just came through my from the Daily Mail out of the UK. So I want to see what that is after the
Yeah,
show.
that would be interesting. Yeah, we'll have to talk about that and see what goes on with that. What are some of the actions you've taken for children and their families? Like, do you go into a courtroom if you have to and advocate?
Yes, I actually have. I've been blessed. One of my I don't like using the word triumphs, because the triumph isn't what I do. The triumph is the result for the child. But I had a situation in Illinois. Now, mind you, folks, I'm in Pennsylvania on the eastern side of Pennsylvania. Where I had to go in Illinois was literally 1,000 miles away from me. But it was a situation in Illinois going on where a child was being very very abused and neglected at home by a parent that had an addiction issue. And no, I am not going to say whether the parent was a male or female, because there's good and bad on both sides. Okay, so we're not going to stigmatize anyone because of their sexual orientation. But this parent definitely was doing things that weren't right. And I attempted to work with this parent and get them to turn themselves around. When I realized I was going nowhere with it, I used to ride with Bikers Against Child Abuse and many different biker organizations. Uh, but I knew I had no money to help this child. So I sold my Harley, and I went out to Illinois to help this child. And so one of the actions I was able to take is, before I got to Illinois, I found out that Illinois would recognize my my uh, my training as a court-appointed special advocate. I went through that training it's called CASA, CASA. People might have heard of Dr. Phil talks about it. He's one of the spokespeople. I would say be careful with it. Okay, personal experience. They're very tied into the court system. You have to make sure you have a good CASA who's actually the voice of the child, not the voice of the lawyers and the judges that are sitting behind the bench. But there are good CASAs out there. But that training afforded me the opportunity, I found out, to be able to go out there if I wanted to Illinois and Springfield and actually advocate and mediate between these two parents a custody agreement. So I took the money from the Harley. I went out there and I was blessed to be able to mediate getting the child voluntarily removed from the neglectful abusive parent and given to the non-neglectful abusive parent, with the understanding, and this was very important, that we did this. And I showed them in Illinois, and I've done it in other places too since then, with the understanding that this child still needed that other parent, because that child didn't pick who their parent is. Remember that, folks. The children did not pick who mom and dad were. They had no choice in it. None of us did. So that child still needs that other parent. How can we keep that parent involved in the child's life at the same time, keep the child protected? So what we set up was that the parent that was having these issues would get the assistance they needed. And as long as they were showing they were getting the assistance they needed and forward progress in that assistance, not just going to a program because, okay, I go to the program and that's what I do, because that's what my mother did. I was in care for 10 years. I was in the foster care system. And I'll tell you, if it wasn't for the beautiful foster parents I had, I wouldn't be the man I am today. I had a bad 13-day experience in foster care with my brother, but I had a wonderful 10 years. I was sent back home to my mother by a court order because she had completed all of her, quote, she was required to do to get me back. Of course, it took her 10 years. And by the time when I was sent home to her at the age of 13, after 10 years in foster care, I went home, not to go too deep into it, because I know we're running the show here. It's not about this today, but my life being taken with my brother would have been more merciful than what I went through for the next almost 5 years being sent home to my biological mother, because she had done what the system told her to do. To this day, and I'll expose my age, because I'm blessed to be as full of wisdom as I am at the age I am. To this day, I still keep in touch with my last social worker, and I got out of care in 1976. And so we're talking some 40 some odd years later. I still keep in touch with him. And he told me the first time I reached out to him as an adult, how hard he fought to keep me from being returned to my mother, because he knew what was going to go on. And he said, but the courts overruled me. And folks, a lot of times, if you want to know what's going on, you asked this question earlier, and it's another idea that pops in my head as we're going on. You want to see what's going on in the court system? You want to understand it? Take some time, go sit through a few hearings. Go into the public, sit in the back in the public, and just listen. And you'll learn so much. That's a lot of what I learned, was going in and listening, hearing what's happening, finding in these family court situations where you could get in. If you couldn't get in because you weren't allowed, because it was a family only, get in touch with a family member, see if they would let you come in so that you can learn, because you learn so much and you get so enlightened to what's really going on. But that's some of what the things I've done. I'm blessed right now. I every day, my full-time job, because as I said earlier, I don't charge, and I will never charge for any of my child advocacy work to the parents or the children. My full-time job, I am the executive director of a HUD certified and HUD approved housing counseling agency. And how do I help children there? Well, if I can help a child or family stabilize and sustain their housing and lessen their debt burden on them, which a lot of abuse happens because of frustration and anger or fear. If we can lessen that, we take away some of that pressure that then boils over onto the children. So every day I am blessed to run the only Pocono Mountain, Pennsylvania region HUD certified approved housing counseling agency. And boy, Charlie, how'd you get into that? You only have a high school diploma. Well, short version of that story, in 2018, I was 72 hours from being homeless. I was sent to the agency to get help to save my house. And when I got here, I was told that they wouldn't be able to help me because I hadn't worked in more than 3 years, because I have a medical condition that doesn't allow me to do the work I used to do. So I couldn't do any of the physical labor I used to do. And after my talk to the director, and I shared with her my background and the things I've done with homeless initiatives around the country and many different things, again, not toot my horn here, she said she offered me opportunity to work for her. And the agency then provided me the money to save my house. And it was supposed to be a temporary job for 1 month so I can learn data entry. Because yes, folks, there was a time when there weren't computers in classrooms, and I was there. So I didn't know how to use a computer. I could turn the thing on, but other than that, after that, I was like, okay, let me call my daughter. My daughter during kindergarten taught me how to use a mouse. So that's. But so I, where was I going? I lost myself again. Please forgive me for that. I kind of lost my train of thought here for a moment.
No, that happens to me often. We were talking about CASA
Oh
and
yeah,
going to court.
yeah. The things I've done. Yeah, that's where we're at. We were talking about the things I've done. So, this can be done by anyone. I haven't done anything special or different. It's just thinking differently and not buying into the rhetoric you hear. And by the way, folks, I am not pro child welfare systems for government, non-government agencies. And I've been called a traitor by families and parents who see me involved with that. And they say, oh, you're working for the other side. Well, no, I'm not working for the other side. See, here's the key. The key is understanding that in order to get onto the other side, you have to be willing to go across the bridge. And I get on the bridge not to go into the other side and side with them, is to bring the voice from this side to that side and then bring their voice over so that we can meet in the middle, because we have got to come and work together. We can stand out on street corners like I did for many years with bullhorns in our hands, hollering at a system, telling them they need to change, calling them names as they go by. And it gives us a momentary feeling of, oh, look what I did. But what did we really do? What did that do that actually impacted that child's life? When we can go in and find a way to enter and infiltrate these systems and then bring in our insight within them. See, so we have organizations like CASA. There's many organizations you can join. There's the National Association of Adult Survivors of Child Abuse. Zero cost to belong to that. No membership fee, no application. You just go there. It's naasca.org. I was on their board. I was their secretary of the board of directors. I did a radio show for them for 2 years. I have moved on into other endeavors I'm doing. But, I was talking about my housing counseling. So that's what I ended up. Now that the train came back in station and my thought came back, I ended up, after a month of being here, I was supposed to be learning how to do data entry. I went to the director and asked her if I could stay. She obviously invited me to stay. And a year and a half later, April 2018, I came here losing my house. A year and a half later, I was appointed acting director of the agency because the executive director did some things that were less than ethical and moral and had to step down. And then a few months after that, the board of directors voted me and elected me to become the executive director. So here I am, April of 2021 will be my 3-year anniversary of being 72 hours away from homelessness. And the exact agency that I walked into facing homelessness, I am now the executive director of. And with this, I am able to impact the lives of children of today, future children, young couples getting together, teach them how to buy a house, teaching them how to be a tenant, teaching them what their responsibilities are to the landlord. I do landlord certification programs, and our programs are available nationwide. So there's many things I do, but this isn't about what I'm doing. This is about what you too can do. You, the listener, right now can do something. And you probably already are doing many things, and thank you for that. But no matter how much we do, there's always more we can do. Children are waiting. Children need us. Children are looking up to us. Children, folks, are dry sponges. We adults are pouring out all over them what they're absorbing and what they think adulthood is. And with that, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to let my host go back because I'm taking too much time again. I want to say this as well. When I was out with my daughter in public and she was little, because a lot of times, a lot of people ask, where did my child learn that? That doesn't happen around my house. We don't use foul language. We don't act in that manner. Well, what was your child being exposed to when they were out in public? Now, what were they being exposed to when you weren't around out in public? You really don't know. But I can tell you what they're exposed to when you're out with them in public, you do know if you pay attention. And so what I would do, again, when my daughter was younger and was in those very dry sponge stages, you know, the infant 2, 3, 4, 6-year-old, 8-year-old, young teen, and someone was doing something that was out of line or didn't fall into something that I thought was right for her to be exposed to, I would go over to them. Again, don't confront in a way that comes across as combative. Use other tactics. I would go over to someone and say, hey, excuse me, I appreciate the fact that you have the freedom to speak in however you want or act whenever you want. Could you do me a favor? I'm a little uncomfortable having my child exposed to that. Again, I'm not saying you shouldn't be doing or you can't do it, but I'd really appreciate for the sake of my child. And I'm going to tell you what, so much came from that. I never got into a fight. I never got yelled at. And most of the time I go, oh, I'm so sorry. A lot of times I say, I didn't even realize I was doing it. So there's ways of handling it. And I'm going to, one more quick story and then back to you, my most gracious hostess here. Going back to my NFL days, one of the things that I was recognized for when I worked for the NFL was the fact of when I would kick people out of the game, no one would ever fight with me. No one would ever argue with me. Actually, they usually high-fived me on the way out the gate when they weren't coming back in. And they want to know, how did I do that? Well, it's pretty simple. I'll give you an example. So we had a no smoking area where people weren't supposed to smoke. And you get these security personnel Again, gender, we'll leave the gender out because it doesn't matter about gender, but they're all of a sudden they have this title, and now they're G.I. Joe with Kung Fu grip, or G.I. Jane with Kung Fu grip. They're going to go over there and they're going to show these people what I'm going to do my job. I would just walk over, silently walk in and stand around in the middle of them in the no smoking area and stand right by the smokers and look at them and say, hey, how you doing today? Talk about the game a little. And I say, hey, I just want to thank you for a moment. I want to say, I appreciate you helping me stay employed. And they look at me. I said, yeah, because if you weren't here right now, I may not have a job, because my job right now is to come over and let you know that you're really not supposed to be here. So if you could do me a big favor and move over to where you need to be, you not only help me keep my job because now you went to where you were, but you give me the opportunity to do it again. And you know what? That changed how people did, how they treated you. Oh, they got so cooperative. They walk with you. Now, guys, when I had to kick people out of games, I kicked 3 police officers out of a game. Because, folks, I don't care what your title is in life. I don't care what you carry in your pocket. I don't care. I kept the mayor of Philadelphia out of a game because he didn't have his tickets with him until his entourage went and get him. I have zero respect to you for your stature in life. I have a lot of respect for how you treat others. But, when I would kick people out of the game, I call them a VIP. And what did that stand for me? A visibly intoxicated person. If you were out of hand, you were a VIP. I got your information. I walked you to the front gate. I negated your ticket. I handed you your ID. You went out the door thinking you were getting a VIP package around the corner, and they were gone. And so the NFL has since adopted that for the last 10 years. They've been using the VIP program. But so there's ways. It's innovative thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It's using your own mind to find solutions. You have the answers, folks. They are in there. Allow yourself to delve into them. My answers aren't necessarily your answers. Maybe they'll assist you, but I'll encourage you and empower you to believe and know that you have it.
Definitely. And I was going to ask you, how can people, you said you don't mind being called at any time. What is your number?
Absolutely. I'm going to give not only my phone number, I'm also going to give my email address as well, and then my social networking. So my phone number, and I'll repeat it twice just so in case I go a little too fast, is area code 570-856-5895. And I'll repeat that one more time. 570-856-5895. Now, before I give you my email, I wanted to tell you this, that, you can call me anytime. And again, if I don't answer, please leave a message. I will get back to you. It's important that you know that someone's there, and I will return your call. You don't have to give out your phone numbers, okay? Just because I'm doing this is my calling. It doesn't mean you need to do this. Some people go, oh, Charlie, I'm not giving my number. I don't want you to give your phone number unless you're comfortable doing it. And please, if you're a single, this isn't sexist at all, but in the world we live in, we have to be very careful. If you're a single woman, a single mom, if you're, please, if you're a man who's not certain you're comfortable with doing it, don't give your phone number out. We don't want people, out here looking for you. I mean, I've had people come looking for me. I give them my address. They never show up. But, so yeah, use the phone number. It's available to you 24/7, 366. Share it with someone else if you need to. That's how we're going to make a difference, by being a difference maker. As far as my email address goes, I'm going to give my email address. I have several of them. I'm going to give my personal email address. It's C like Charlie, J like Joseph, because that's what it stands for, Charles Joseph. And then it's Stecker. That's S as in Sam, T as in Tom, ECKER. So it's CJ Stecker, STECKER. And then JR on the back of that, not for J.R. Ewing from the old Dallas days. Again, now I'm aging myself again. And for some of you youngsters, just Google search, you'll find the answer. But it's CJ Stecker Jr., JR, @gmail.com. So the @'s that little A thing with the circle around it. We need to figure out a name for it so we can make a lot of money. Because, the ampersand has a name and the equal sign has a name. This little thing's like a homeless. It's an A thing. It's an @ thing. But so it's at CJ Stecker Jr. @gmail.com. Feel free to look me up on Facebook at Charles J. Stecker, STECKER Jr. My Facebook page is totally open to the public. I post everything. You don't even have to have Facebook to find my Facebook page. I have nothing hidden. All the information's out there. Because why? Because the only thing that can be done to me that hasn't been done already is my life taken. And when my life gets taken, I know where I'm going to be from there. And I have no fear. I have a reverent fear and a reverent respect for my fellow human being, most importantly, our children. And I want to be there. If you're an abuser, if you're a person who is abusing and neglecting, and you know it isn't what you want to do, please call 570-856-5895 any time of the day or night. There's no judgment for me on you. Am I going to be real with you? Yeah. Am I going to hear you tell me I went to abuse myself, so it's a learned behavior? I'm going to allow you to use that as your excuse for the moment, but we're going to get right through it real quick, because I'm going to tell you what, under the age of 18, we had no choice about what happened to us. We were a product of the environment of the adults that were created around us. After the age of 18, after we became adults, after we got out on our own, every action and every reaction we have is a direct result of our choices. We may have been influenced, and I'll speak from personal experience. Yes, pornography was an addiction I struggled with, adult pornography, because of the influence that was placed upon me by the adults in my life in my childhood, especially my biological mother, who forced it on me. But that did not afford me the right to go ahead and allow pornography, adult pornography, any pornography. I say adult because people have talked about child pornography in the past. If I had a problem with that, I already would have locked myself away. But even with that, it didn't give me a pass to just go ahead and use that as my excuse for continuing the behavior I knew was wrong. Sadly, it ruined my marriage. It destroyed my marriage. And subsequently, my daughter had to be raised in a split home. Part and parcel. I mean, it took two of us to make it and two of us to break it. I don't point the finger without accepting my responsibility. But if you're an abuser, if you're not sure if you're an abuser, but you feel like maybe, if you're just getting angry and you want to know how to handle it, please reach out. I am telling you, I want to be there for you. There's not going to be any judgment. You know what you're going to get? You're going to get a whole lot of love. You're going to get some real talk. You're going to get straightforward, but you're going to get understanding, and hopefully, show you a way. If you lost your child, or children, for any reason, maybe founded reasons, but you're working so hard to get them back because you love them. You didn't become a parent because you wanted to hurt your child. You became a parent because you wanted to have a child and you wanted to raise them. And maybe you lost your way, or maybe you didn't have that structure to find out. Don't be afraid to reach out. Okay, please. I'm here for you. You know, it's so important to people. And that's another thing I get pummeled by a lot of other quote child advocates who get mad at me because I want to help the abusers. Why do you want to help them? You gotta say to me. I said, why would I not want to help them? How can you treat cancer if you don't treat cancer? You have to go to where the cancer is. We've been, for far too long, we've been treating the symptoms. We haven't been treating the cause. And so, it's getting to that root cause. And another thing I'm blessed to do, I've spoken in many prisons across New Jersey and Pennsylvania. I just got told a couple of days ago I'm going to be invited to speak at all the local schools in my area. And anybody can do this, folks. I'm nobody special. I'm just a guy that has a mission. And do I have the time? Yes, because I stayed single, so I have a little more time. Although I do have a doggie that adopted me during COVID. I didn't adopt her; she adopted me. But
Oh,
but and she's the most amazing creature in the world. But any of us can do this. I want to just encourage anybody listening. If you know an abuser, if you know somebody that's going through struggles, please don't beat them down. Don't come at them heavy and hard and judgmental, although they may deserve it. Okay, come at them in a way that maybe you don't know what to say to them, but say, "Hey, I heard this phone number. Give this person a call." Let them know what you're struggling with. I think that's how we're going to make a change. I mean, it's not the answer, but it's a answer. And there's a lot of a answers out there that have become the answer of slowing down the pandemic of child abuse, the war on children of many of us. I am a a former POW of that war. I'm a former missing in action of that war. My brother is a KIA, which is known as killed in action of that war. It's the silent war that no one wants to talk about, and even fewer want to end. Folks, it's time we stand up for these children. We end the war on children. It's worse than any war on drugs. It's worse than any other war we have. And it's a lot of it. And I know we are going to have another show, Marianne, because
Mhm.
we need to get into the war that's going on in the family court system that we didn't get a chance to get into today. And that is a war. And I'm gonna leave a teaser for folks to come back for our next show when I'm back on. That is a war. If there's one area of anything that needs to be deconstructed, gotten rid of, and not reconstructed, it is the family court system. It is as corrupt as the day it's long. Kangaroos are jumping all around it. We don't need a family court system. We need a bolstered up criminal court system that takes these child criminal activities that are perpetrated upon children and brings them before a criminal court with criminal lawyers and criminal judges and juries that will hear, not a judge and a child advocate and a lawyer behind a bench on what a child needs to go through because they were a victim of a criminal act done to them by an adult. If you're an adult and you hit a child, you have a less chance of getting penalized for doing that. When if two adults went at each other, both of us would be charged, one or both of us would be charged with assault and battery, and we'd be locked up and or taken into court. Yet so many people that abuse and neglect children never even see a day anywhere near a criminal court. And so many loving, caring parents today, and my heart bleeds for you because I understand. I lost my daughter for over a year. It took me 16 years of my daughter's adult life to get myself back into her life. I lost her at the age of 14 again, and it took me till she was 29, so 15 years to get myself back into her life. My heart aches for you, the alienated parent, whether you're the mom or the dad, the
Mhm.
alienated parent through no fault of their own, through just wanting what's best for their child, yet the other side made themselves look like Hollywood, or made themselves look so wonderful and the other person looks so awful, and they're not. I am here for you too. Use my phone number, call. We're going to talk more about this. This family court system needs to be obliterated, destroyed, taken down, deconstructed. The judges and the people that operate it need to be held accountable for what they're doing, for the detrimental situations they're putting families and children in, and to wonderful parents, moms and dads out there that should have their children back. Maybe they lost their child for a viable reason, but that does not mean they should lose their child forever, because that child needs mom and or dad. And if they're a bad parent, well, then there's ways of working with that. But I know so many good, loving parents. One I'm on here
Mhm.
right now with Marianne, who's going through this. And if you can see the tears that I'm fighting, and you can see the heart that's broken for you and all you other people out there that are going through that, I'm here, man. I am here. I love all of you to life. I don't love anybody to death anymore. I love everyone to life. And I love
Mhm.
your life for real. And I love your kids. And damn it, we're going to fight hard for these kids. And we're going to stand up and they're going to know that even if they don't come back to us, mom or dad stood up for me. Grandmom or grandpop stood up for me. My aunt or uncle stood up for me. My brother and sister stood up for me. We can do it. You can do it. We're going to do it. I love all of you. Thank you so much, Marianne.
I'm so glad I had you on, and I'll have you back on hopefully next month.
Whenever you're ready, I'm here.
Okay, that would be great. I learned a lot. I hope everybody else did. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in the family courtrooms that in turn perpetuate parental alienation. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again, and I will definitely have Charles back on. And everyone have a good weekend. Thank you.